From your perspective, did technology allow us to ultimately go from gatherer to hunter? Because I've heard that we've eaten meat for 2.5 million years. That's the statistic that I go back to. I don't know if that's correct, but I feel like I remember you on episode 107 saying that we started off as gatherers, and then with the usage, incorporation of certain technologies, it allowed us to actually be able to hunt and get access to these nutrients from animals that were never accessible before.
We did, but there's a step even in between that. So the quick sort of dietary timeline and technology's a piece of this as well. I usually start at somewhere between 5 and 7 million years ago, because that's when we first stood upright. So anything that was literally resembling us and our ancestors, and really in my mind, starts between 5 and 7 million years ago. Upright standing, culture at some level, community having individuals or ancestors. They were full gatherers, no technologies whatsoever. So every bit of food that they ate, they collected with their hands or their mouths. They chewed with the only physical processing was with their teeth, and the only chemical processing was happening inside their digestive tract. So we at the time were still wild animals grabbing food and eating that food and subsisting solely on that food. So we were solely gatherers. And the only foods that were in the diet at the time were a very limited amount of hyper-seasonal, hyper-local vegetables and fruits, and a whole bunch of bugs. And of the three, the most reliable food resource, the most nutrient-dense food resource, the most safe food source of all of it were the insects. And we were small, and our brains were small, and that did fine. I mean, we were able to subsist on that. Not much was changing for millions of years over that entirety of that time. At 3.4 million years ago, that's the date right now at least, because that's the oldest tool we found, and it's found in conjunction with butchered bones of animals. We introduced scavenged meat into our diet. So we didn't kill the animal, but what's left on the savannah after the predator ate all the good parts out of the inside, we could go and access because we were cutting pieces of meat off and bringing them back to safety, sharing it with other groups. So we go from 5 to 7 million years ago, gatherers, to scavenger gatherers at about 3.5 million years ago. So we introduced meat into the diet. And then at about 2 million years ago, we start hunting. So that change from scavenger gatherer to hunter gatherer happens at about 2 million years ago. And it's a really significant point in prehistory in my mind, because it's also at that time that our brains and our bodies grow to almost modern proportions. So it's Homo erectus, huge bodies. Brains are not as big as ours, but damn close. It's one of the biggest jumps, actually the biggest jump in brain size we've ever seen. And the two technological developments that happen at the same time are the introduction of hunting and the introduction of fire. So fire does a lot of things, but I think it's the introduction of hunting that's a significant change, because what we see is scavenger gatherers are only eating meat and a little bit of marrow, but eating meat. They're eating the leftover meat from an animal that's been killed by another animal. But when we start hunting, we're the predators. We have first access to every part of that animal. We can, we have access to the blood, the fat, the organs, all the offal, the most nutrient-dense, bioavailable parts of that animal, and obviously also the meat, and can take animals down at will. So it's that moment that I believe we really started to become human the way that we think about it. And then, lots of wonderful developments over 2 million years, and then we hit the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and we're the products of that.
Do you have any theories or hypothesis around why we were choosing to go from these different stages of scavenger to hunter? Because in theory, there's an added risk there. Going out, and some of these animals are aggressive, and you're having to take them on, whereas eating plants is not as dangerous. So I'm curious.
Actually, no, it's a lot more dangerous.
Okay.
One of the things we posted about this about a year and a half ago, I said, the difference between plants and animals is animals will kill you when they're alive, and plants will kill you when they're dead. I think it's very, very true. The image I have in my head, and there's no single thing that I've ever seen in the archaeological record that says this is exactly what happened. This is all interpretation just based upon my own experience and the way I perceive the way things were happening in the past. And again, we even talk about millions of years in our conversation here. We're generalizing and a lot of diversity. But one of the things that I like to think about, the way that I think about it, is today, and we might have talked about this in the last time we spoke. modern Americans want to eat all day long and not get fat. I mean, when we get down to it, that's really what they want to do. And you can see it in the packaging, you can see it in the marketing. You go to the grocery store and people are selecting food because it's advertising what it doesn't have in it. You know, low fat, low carb, whatever. And we seek out nutrient-free food. Not us, but most Americans seek out nutrient-free foods and then pay a whole lot of money to go to the gym and get on a treadmill. It's the exact opposite of the way we humans have approached food for the entirety of the time that we've been on the planet. We've always been doing the opposite. We've always been doing everything that we can to get the most amount of nutrition with the least amount of work. And that, when you really think about it, that's exactly what those steps are showing. Where, you know, every one of those steps, up until the agricultural revolution, everything changes, but every one of those steps, we're actually working less hard to get a lot more nutrition in return. So real quick, let me just do a little bit of a segue because it's very important. If we think about the technologies involved with including plants in our diets and including animals in our diets, there's a very big difference. There's two very big differences. One is, if we divide that into the technologies required to get the food, to access it, and then the technologies required to process the food, or at least make it as safe and nutrient-dense and bioavailable for our bodies, there's very big differences. Plants require almost nothing to get. Now, this is all hunter-gatherer. This isn't agricultural stuff. Hunter-gatherers, we've spent a lot of time with hunter-gatherers all over the world. Every one of them has a digging stick, some version of a stick to put it in the ground and dig up some roots and corms and tubers. But other than that, maybe a sharp edge to cut some things, but we're talking about collective foraging, right? Using your fingers. Almost no technological investment to get a wild plant. Animals are the opposite, right? All the technological investment for animals is in getting it, overcoming our physical limitations, and, you know, whether it's a trap or a spear or an atlatl or a bow and arrow or a net or a fishing hook or whatever it is, a lot of technological investment goes into getting that animal, right? But once you have that animal, I mean, you just need a sharp edge. You don't even have to cook it, right? All you need is something to cut it open, and you have, you know, this incredibly safe, nutrient-dense, bioavailable food in front of you. But plants are the exact opposite on that other end, right? The real work starts once you have that plant, and you have to detoxify it, and then you have to do a massive amount of work to make the nutrients in it available to our bodies. So if you look over time, almost all the technological input for animals was getting the animal. Almost all the technological input for plants was making a plant safe and more nutrient dense and or bioavailable to our bodies. But one of the things that's been, and I didn't even know it at the time because I wasn't as animal focused 20 years ago as I am now. But for 20 years, one of the major things that I've focused on in my research is indigenous and traditional ways of detoxifying plants. Like, it fascinates me. And the amount and the complexity of it is just off the charts. Like, it is unbelievable the ways that people have figured out how to make a plant that has no business going into our mouth safe enough that we can derive some nutrition from it. And on one level, you say, wow, that's really cool. That's really ingenious. And then you have somebody like Anthony Chafee say, well, then why the hell bother? Like, why would you even spend any time with it?